This is your opportunity to ask questions. There are a few in here that I'm going to filter through that you've already submitted through SpeakerBrain or through the GOTO app. Rather, I'm seeing it in SpeakerBrain. But hopefully you've started to see some of the reasons why security people want to add value, some of the ways security can add value, and that security is traditionally then a cost inhibitor and friction, but perhaps the rugged kind of concept is more palatable to you and to your teammates. For the face you might not recognize yet, this is Nick Galbraith, who is also speaking on rugged in deployment and operational security on Friday. So he's crashing because hackers hack. I guess one of the questions that I did see in some of these was since this is brand new for people, there's a lot of material to cover. So one of the questions for you, for example, but we'll give it to everybody, is if you're interviewing people or trying to promote people into a rugged DevOps role, whether they're starting in development or they're starting in security, which attributes and skill sets are most important if you're just getting started?
Yeah. So when I'm looking for folks to add to my team, we hire developers into my team. And that has been a deliberate choice because we found that, like I said earlier, on average, a developer can learn to be a security person 5 times faster than anyone else. And in this environment, that's so critical. So development skills actually get you in the door with my type of a team. And I would tell you the next piece is really, we run a specific type of interview. We actually basically pull somebody in and give them a pen and basically have them whiteboard and walk through a scenario. And that really does tell you how somebody thinks around the problem space and gives you a good opportunity to see how they might apply things like what different types of tools are available, how they might approach the problem. Are they going to ask to basically write something down, or are they thinking more about how they'd write something in code? And so I think that's kind of how we apply finding skills for a DevSecOps environment and really trying to push the needle there. So security is actually the last thing I look for in somebody to join my team. And that's just specifically that it's easier to get developers to speak developerese, if you will, to the rest of the organization.
100%. I've built operations security teams, and now it's looking for developers who want to do something different, want to learn new skills, maybe want to expand over into management later, learn how to start doing team building and stuff like that. Like everything is programming now. And security folks moving in development are typically not the greatest developers. And at this stage, like everything we're doing is programming. So I'm looking for developers. Actually, no security experience is actually probably better.
Yeah. It's true, actually. The folks that come in with baggage actually take longer to learn how to do this, and so it's absolutely true.
The other one I'll add is I get to work with a lot of the great teams, and empathy and bridge building are big components that you don't succeed in DevOps if you can't bridge functions, and when you add security, it adds even more complication, the number of people that you need to talk to, and if you can't have a risk conversation with an executive and a technical coverage developer and have the ability to have empathy with both those people, it's very hard to succeed.
Most security people haven't really worked on large teams. Security, as it is now, is frequently a very sort of solitary environment, and everything now is teams and cross-functional. So someone who's worked on teams is also essential.
We're in a slightly more unusual position. We have access to quite a lot of people with a huge amount of security knowledge, and so we have found good technical people there. We work with all kinds of people who have security backgrounds, who have written software, have operated real services, have spent a long time doing that. But we still find when hiring new people, it's much easier for us to hire somebody who has a software development background, a technical architecture background, and teach them security because we have a mass of security people. people. The one place I'd be wary of that is if you don't have any security people in your organization already. Actually, that's where you probably do want to hire somebody who has a security background to kickstart that process.
I think the other thing is people who are willing to bang down your door to do this job are the first people you should hire. They absolutely are.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We should talk political things like Snowden and whatnot. I'm just kidding. No. Actually, one of the questions for you was, could we get some technical details of the tools you use? And I said, probably not. All right. You just have to buy them a pint first. James, a question for you. It sounds like Gauntlet can call lots of security tools and can do lots of security use cases. What are some of the really basic first ones if you don't know what SQL injection is and whatnot? And what other tools are in this kind of emerging tool chain?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, the Gauntlet, in that Gauntlet demo, we have a bunch of different examples that you can put inside there. I think it's helpful to, like, one of the real big problems with kind of implementing security testing inside of your build pipeline is you could really slow the build down. And if you take a security tool like Arachne or something like that, it's a scanner. First it like spiders the whole site, and then it tries to exercise the whole site and try to pin test it, and then after 5 hours it crashes or whatever. But that's because it's gets stuck in a loop or something like that. And so the way that you really have to work on implementing Gauntlet and a lot of these other type of tools into your infrastructure is you have to be very, very specific about what you're actually going to attack. And so I think some of the tools like just taking Arachne and just looking for cross-site scripting on a single page, I think that's a really helpful thing. You can take Mozilla has they have a tool, a Python script called Garmer, and you can run Garmer, which is an opinionated way that they view web application security. And you can just say, if it doesn't pass all these Garmer checks, or 50% of them or whatever, then I'm going to call it a failure. So plugging in some of those things are useful.
So we referred today quite a few times, and I was asked during the break, but not online, what the heck is a blue team or a red team, or are all hackers the same? So who wants to take a stab at blue team, red team, purple team?
Oh, good.
And then also maybe profile breaker, builder, fixer.
White hat, black.
Yeah, absolutely. So a blue team is basically a team of folks that pull in instrumentation, logging, details about how something might be abused, and the behavior you might see that's anti to how a workload has been created. And so a blue team is really important in trying to figure out how to operate. And so you'll see things like security operations. They do activities around forensics, incident response, detection and containment. You could imagine a scenario where your instrumentation alerts at 1:30 in the morning because an attacker is going after your website. And so that might come in, and you as a blue team member will be the first person to take that alert and go and triage it on your website. So it's a good way of thinking about it. A red team member is someone who actually actively hacks and exploits, and specifically exploits in production. So they're going out and looking at your web application and basically, or your other tools that might be out there. You might have web services, and they're looking for opportunities to act like an attacker and see how far they can get with their testing.
Oh, I'll just follow up on red team. The fact that you're here hopefully means you're not really exposed to this. But red team, she's in a very progressive environment. Red team typically means in order to affect security change, we need to self-hack ourselves because the other party will not do basic upgrades. I'm not upgrading my Windows XP system. I'm on deadline. So the red team has to come in, break something. Okay, now I'm forced to upgrade. That's actually how broken large companies typically are, and that's what red team typically means. It's a company that's brought in to go affect change, which is sort of a sad, slow, and ineffective way of doing it. Now, builder, breaker, fixer, what was the question?
They're fairly self-explanatory.
They're fairly self-explanatory. Builder, breaker, fixer. I don't know. Who wants to grab this one?
One thing I'll say about red teaming is, I think modern SaaS providers and DevOps shops are far more likely to avail themselves of red teaming. Traditionally, the idea of attacking your e-commerce site during production is like enough to give people heart attacks.
Fired.
And what you'll typically do is you'll pay a lot of money to just have someone red team you, and you'll say you're only allowed to scan these IP addresses and only do these things, because if you look cross-eyed at that server, it might crash. And real attackers don't care.
Yeah.
So it's an emerging thing, but the attitude of be mean to your code is making this a more common behavior.
And I'd say it goes beyond being mean to your code. An attacker is not going to call you and schedule an appointment to break into your site. They're not.
Usually
and it takes a little bit of time and effort to get management to think like this. The one rule we do have that we've put in place is, as a red team member, you are not allowed to take anything down. So that's the major rule for us, and we're really careful about how we think about things. If we could take something down, we actually put that down in our findings, and we operate that every day. So you're going to find that this is a really interesting and unusual style, but to their point, we're leading in this area and space, and we're bleeding edge. So we're banging our head a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so those of you who are from an operations background, do you do game days around disaster recovery? Anybody doing game days at the moment? One at the background. So game days are fairly common fairly common. They're becoming more common in operations, and it's the time when you say to the operations team, we're going to get somebody's going to make something fail in production, and we're going to see how you respond. You get to test out all of your automated response processes. And a red team is the same thing. It's a security team doing that same process. They're saying, we're going to make stuff fail, and we're not going to tell you what we're going to make fail. We're going to find out, do you detect it? How quickly can you respond? And do you fix the right thing? One of the critical things that we have with red teams is that we generally have to make sure some reasonably senior people know they're going on, because the first time we tried it, somebody tried to, raise up quite high to the security services that we were being hacked, and we had to say, no, don't tell them, because we don't really want them to come in guns blazing to the other side of the office, because it'll really upset people. So you do have to have some executive buy-in, and we alert people like CERT and so forth. We're doing this. If you get information coming from somewhere, or you notice something that we didn't, it's okay, we know it's happening, and they know how to call us, and we can coordinate with other agencies and other organizations to make them behave the same way. So we can say, what happens if we get red teamed, but you call CERT and they don't respond? Because the emergency cyber emergency response team, they may not respond in a real thing. There might be something else going on. Does the team know what to do if they don't respond? Do they know how to handle that? So doing that cross-organizational stuff is an important part of that as well. So you have to build it up one step at a time.
And I want to encourage anybody in the audience that does want to ask a question that did not do so here. Please think of that and raise your hand.
Yeah. One last thought on blue team. If you have folks that are actively attacking your applications and nothing's being detected and there are no alerts and there isn't any activity happening to contain, you likely don't have an effective blue team.
Said politely.
I think it takes a lot of exercise to get there.
What about the opposite problem of having no alerts? Sounds unusual to me. Having way too many alerts. How do you deal with that? How do you filter the floods?
We actually bring in. So I will. So when we're bringing in large amounts of data, how do you determine an attack in large amounts of data versus when you have no data at all? And it's actually a really very good question. This has to do with how red team and blue team play together. A red team member is helping you to figure out how to sift data and actually how to get really good at writing the rules to transform large data sets and actually find anomalies and behavioral differences between how something should be operating and how something actually does operate.
In most cases in security, it's noise to signal, not signal to noise.
Yeah.
That's and I mean some of that obviously you need to look at every login to see which ones fail or which ones could be unique. But yeah, that analyst process and automation is.
I'll even go one step further, which is to give you an example of we see a lot of noise with break-ins these days because attackers are moving over to cloud-based services. And we've taken our minds and actually wrapped ourselves around the problem space to find out that we shouldn't be worried about where things are coming from, but where they're actually traveling to. So which application server, which IP address is in play, what kinds of anomalies are we seeing, and just changing how we think about the problem as a way to detect things in a different way.
I'm going to shift a little bit based on some questions here and over breaks. How many, raise your hands if you think Docker or something like Docker is kind of awesome. Okay. Raise your hand, keep your hand up if you think the supply chain principles this morning might be pretty valuable. Okay. Now, Nick pointed out that you can't necessarily have both. When you're grabbing a container from the intertubes or from a hub, its provenance, origin, quality, and hygiene of the open source that went into it is opaque to you in current state. So would you like to say a few things? What's that? That's what content trust is for. And Chris Swan will be talking about rugged stuff on Friday as well. You want to frame that?
Oh, yeah, this is sort of based on a talk I did, February? Wow, it's now half a year ago. The beauty of containers and VM and shipping is first awesome, so don't make me think I'm disparaging anything. The problem with sort of like VMs and containers is that the tools most security and operation people have are sort of neutered by them. What I mean is, let's say you want to scan all your machines for latest OpenSSL version, for instance. That's fairly trivial in sort of a traditional, you can do a distributed shell and log in and do, dpackage-l or whatever version control system you have for your operating system, what package lists you have. For things that are shipped opaquely, such as containers, or perhaps some other examples where you're not able to log in, there's no way of quickly building a manifest of what's on that box. That's not the end of the world. It just means security has to sort of engage itself into the release engineering process, and that's just new. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just something we have to sort of keep in mind.
Yeah, in fact, I think you exploded John Willis's brain from Docker. So we're doing a talk at the DevOps Enterprise Summit on immutable delivery meets supply chain transparency. And there's ways to solve it right now. And as Chris alluded to, and probably he's adding a slide right now, people are trying to address this after the Banyan report of all the known vulnerabilities in Docker Hub. But it's something that is a proof point of why rugged and DevOps need to work together.
So we did some red teaming on Docker as well, and one of the things we determined is Docker's a great technology for us to deploy red team tools to the actual instances, and we also did a profiler agent that gets deployed out to the workloads. So it's a really cool technology, and we've learned how to not only do those things, but also intercept traffic and really take advantage of it. So it does actually have a lot of benefits, as well as from a security perspective, we're learning a lot in this environment. I would say the jury's still out, but it's a unique capability for a security person to develop a Docker container and actually ship it out to the same set of systems and be able to leverage it as though it's part of the environment.
I mean, one of the interesting Docker, just like the crypto frameworks are very unclear to date, and how you apply encryption in Docker is still something that has a lot of work to do. You can encrypt under containers, so you can encrypt files in containers, but the strategy for them is interesting. It goes along with some of that provenance and tools you pick up.
Now, one of the objections, I believe, to my talk was it sounded like I was maybe bashing open source, and I want to be very clear. I think the software supply chain opportunity is for closed source, open source. In fact, some of the worst offenders are the COTS vendors themselves. I was simply using a lot of open source statistics because that's 90% or more of the attacks last year, just because that's the most commonly dependent upon stuff. And similarly, we're not bashing Docker. We love this stuff. It's more the opportunity to do better. So I think one last question I'll ask everybody is, most of what you've heard today is the security community trying to adapt its traditional thinking to a DevOps context today. But when I talk to Adrian, we talk about, with Lambda, server instances only exist for seconds or less than a second. So therefore, maybe attacker can't maintain persistence. So there's ways to use some of this continuous delivery ephemeral computing, immutable delivery, software-defined everything to maybe do some things we've never been able to do with security before, like fog computing. So I'm going to ask each of you, what's most exciting if you project out a year from now? How could, if we have this loving embrace between the rugged community and the DevOps community, what might really get sexy? Anybody want to go first?
The thing I'm looking forward to, which is the dullest thing in the world, but security tools at the moment are almost always designed to be run by a human one at a time. In a year's time, I'm hoping they'll all have APIs, they'll all be automatable, and it'll make so much everything better.
I think the sexiest thing is actually having a contribute back model where everybody wants to participate and make security better for all of the applications that are out there. What I aspire to most is to be able to basically provide that forum for the 3,000 developers we have at Intuit and have that sort of leak outside of our company to start to become the practice that gets engaged in across the industry.
Most excited. Most excited actually for more people in development to move into security. And this is sort of not quite the question, but what we said before, like this is a huge opportunity and a huge shift. And people like yourselves have a role to play. And that's the really exciting part. And let me tell you, any one of you says like, hey, you know what, dev's cool. I'm going to do dev and security. I can't do the dollar-pound conversion, but you're adding on a substantial amount. Like the skills for development and security are like on fire hot right now. Like it is unbelievable. And I'm really looking forward to sort of taking your knowledge of sort of like how to build things well into security, because that's like this huge gap right now. If you enter security, you'll be like, wow, some of it's great, but a lot of it's like, wow, this is really primitive stuff. Like this is it? Like this is the magic? Like, yeah, it's like, wow, I could have done this a long time ago and made a lot more money, right? Like, so I'm really looking forward to you. Looking forward to you, development, getting much more engaged in security and operations and just making it a much more interesting sort of workplace.
Yeah, I think we saw a big shift. Even like 2 years ago, you're still having a lot of conversations of like, why should we do DevOps? Like, really, isn't that stupid? Or stuff like that. And then now it's like you don't have to have that conversation anymore. It's like it's already happened. And I think the same thing is happening with security. I can already kind of see imprints of that. And so I'm excited to see that unfold. Of course, I'm excited about tooling and all that kind of stuff that's coming around. But I think that's the bigger push.
I want to see some existing security tools die. So one of the premises in security is like people say you'll never turn off a security tool because then an adversary will just revert to that old attack. Which I think is partially a valid argument, but there's a lot of tools it doesn't apply to. A lot of what we do in security is dealing with the fact that we choose, we buy things based on, cost. We build them as fast as we can, and we don't actually build, secure, rugged things. And I think that if we got that right, if we chose components that had, strong attributes, we had, even a mild discipline. I wrote a 12-step check for secure code in like 1997, and I bet 90% of things would fail it today. Just simple stuff, like forks will be controlled, the basic things that would fail. I think if we got those things right, what security does would be completely different. That we could focus on the signal to noise problem. We could focus on, creating speed in the organization. That today a lot of it is dealing with technical debt and sins elsewhere in the organization, and I think we solve that. It makes security more fun, it makes everyone's job more fun, and it makes us faster. So I want to kill some security tools.
All right, I think we have only about 1 minute left. Are there any other burning issues or questions? Have people found this mildly valuable? Okay, cool. Well, the good news is you're going to have a significant amount of additional rugged content on Friday. Starting off, I believe, with you, Nick. Chris Swan, some privacy talks. So thank you for your time today. We are eager to team with you and make more awesomeness together than we could apart. So thank you.